Well, thank you very much, John. We have had some questions come through. So the first one is from Henk, who has asked what exactly was missing from Greek maths that it didn't develop algebra?
That's a good question. I would say, roughly speaking, the Greeks understood addition and subtraction, but they didn't fully understand multiplication. Their problem with multiplication was that they understood the product of two lengths to be literally a rectangle, the lengths of the two perpendicular sides. So you could also interpret a product of three lengths as a solid, like a brick, but you couldn't understand the product of four lengths because we can't visualize four-dimensional objects. And they got stuck there. So they sort of gave up on the idea of combining addition and multiplication.
Thank you. Matt has asked, are some infinities bigger than others?
Yes, definitely. And the diagonal argument shows that the infinity of real numbers is bigger than the infinity of natural numbers. In fact, Cantor went further than that. He showed that any set has more subsets than it has members. So, for instance, there are more sets of natural numbers than there are natural numbers. And this applies to any set, whatever. So sets get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no limit. There's no biggest set.
See, when you think about things like that, mind blown. Aztec has said, I haven't seen this particular proof, the bytes of uncountability of the points on a line before. Is this your own thing? And if not, what are its origins?
The origin really is a paper by Axel Harnack in 1885. And he was thinking about the rational numbers in the unit interval. And you can count the rational numbers. There's a first, second, third, and so forth, basically by that two-dimensional picture I showed you. And then he thought about covering each rational number by a byte like I did. And then he got confused because he realized that the bytes could be as small as you pleased, and it somehow meant that you could cover an interval of the line by intervals that added up to less than that. And he was bewildered by this. So he sort of drew the wrong conclusion from it, but nevertheless, the idea is his.
Thank you. Caroline has asked, so there's a sentence, predicate logic can express these problems, so deciding validity in logic is also unsolvable. Please, could you unpack this and explain?
Yes, to be a little more specific, because this was Turing's idea. He was one of the two that thought of it. You can describe the running of a Turing machine using certain variables and certain predicates. And you can say what it means for the machine to come to a halt. And Turing had proved that there's no algorithm for solving this problem. So simply by translating a problem about Turing machines into logic, he found a problem in logic that you couldn't solve because it was one and the same problem.
Thank you. Matt has asked, do you have a favorite proof for its elegance or other reason?
Well, as I said, I do love the proof of the Pythagorean theorem, but I do love the diagonal argument too, proving that the real numbers are uncountable. So I would say that those are my two favorites.
Good choices. Margaret has asked, in your view, what does this lack of ability to find all axioms imply for our ability to ever define a meaningful theory of everything?
I would say it probably limits what is possible in the theory of everything. If the theory of everything is supposed to include all of mathematics, then it cannot be anything that's implemented by a machine. That much we know. Whether it can be implemented by a human is something that remains to be seen, I suppose.
Philippe has asked, what does this tell us about the limitations of artificial intelligence?
Assuming that artificial intelligence is implemented by a machine, we can state specific problems that machine cannot hold, such as this one about polynomial equations with integer solutions. So, yeah, even artificial intelligence cannot solve that problem.
Asperta Ronaldo has asked which reality would be in the Platonic realm, geometry or algebra?
Now that's a matter of debate and perhaps a matter of taste. Many mathematicians I know prefer geometric explanations. On the other hand, I find it very striking that algebra is able to simulate, as it were, geometry. Anything you can do in geometry can be done by algebra. So if you think about extraterrestrial beings, for example, maybe they don't have a sense of sight, but they could perhaps still do algebra. So geometry is still possible for beings who don't have a sense of, that do not have the same senses that we do.
Thank you. Michael has asked, why do you make the bytes of the line different sizes? Does the size of the bytes matter?
Yes, it does. It's necessary to make the bytes smaller and smaller in such a way that the total amount bitten is finite. And you can do this with infinitely many pieces. But there's various ways you could do it. You could, for instance, pick a size of byte to start with, say length 1, and break it in half and break the half in half again. Or you could break it in thirds, or you can break it in many ways into infinitely many pieces that still add up to the original finite length. So my choices of half, quarter, and eighth is not at all necessary. There's many other ways you could do it.
Keith has asked, what do you think of plausibility proofs? A theorem proved for a simple case. E.g., to introduce some concept to a younger audience, Pythagoras' theorem has a trivial geometric proof for an equal-sided triangle.
I would say I'm all in favor of simplified partial proofs like that, because you can always polish them up. And in fact, mathematicians are as guilty of this as anybody. Very few mathematicians write down complete proofs. It's only quite recently that people have started to implement proofs by computer checkable proofs. And it takes an enormous amount of work to write a computer checkable proof, and very few people have done it. So I'm all in favor of these proofs with strategic omissions.
Ali has asked, do you think that solutions to philosophical and logical problems lie within mathematics?
Well, Gödel thought so, and who am I to argue with Gödel? But I admit not many other people do. But yeah, I think certainly it's of value to anybody, philosophers included, to think about the problems that are raised by mathematics, because the problems in mathematics raise more challenges to the concept of proof than anything else, I think, and in a precise way. So if you can solve a mathematical problem, you know you've solved it. Solving a philosophical problem is a different story. People are always going to argue as to whether you've really solved it or not. Sticking
to the philosophy theme, Margaret has asked, mathematics, created or discovered?
A bit of both, I would say. Somebody said something to the effect that methods are created, but theorems are discovered. And I lean towards that. I feel that the theorems are there, but the ways we devise to find them are creations.
And the last question that I'm going to be able to fit in is from Matt. And they've asked, how do imaginary numbers influence the way proofs/mathematical logic can be applied? For example, geometry on an Argand diagram and such.
Yeah, there's a very nice correspondence between the imaginary numbers and geometry of the plane. And not only Euclidean geometry, but non-Euclidean geometry fixed into this picture as well. So actually, I very much like that correspondence.
Excellent. Well, that is all the time we have for questions. So before I say goodbye to you, John, and thank you, I just want to thank everyone at home or wherever you're watching this today. Thank you for joining us, and of course for your brilliant questions as per usual. Don't forget you can buy copies of John's book, The Story of Proof, Logic and the History of Mathematics. It's available to purchase now. Look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks again for watching us, and thank you, John, for such a engaging and inspirational talk as well. So thank you to everybody, and goodbye.